The locker slammed and an index card fluttered out like a confession, landing face up under my shoe. My name was written in bubble letters, hearts shading the edges like an apology. For a second I thought it was a joke, or worse, one of those anonymous kindness things the student council tried when the cafeteria fights got bad. Then I read the first line, "I see you sneaking out of the theatre," and my stomach went cold in a way that felt like winter inside my rib cage. The hallway sounded far away, sneakers squeaking, someone laughing, the metal echo of 20 doors opening at once. I folded the card in half, then in half again, and slid it into the sleeve of my binder where I kept my schedule, my homework, and now apparently my blackmail. Most people in high school have one life. I was managing 3. There was the version of me teachers loved, quiet, grades steady, never late, always a pleasure to have in class. There was the version for my friends, the one who learned how to be funny fast enough to outrun being a target, who knew when to laugh and when to nod, and when to pretend a comment didn't sting. And then there was the version with a key to the back door of the auditorium, the one who left lunch 10 minutes early to sit in the wings and listen to the tech crew argue about gels and cues because that sound, purpose, language, light, felt like church. The drama club didn't know I existed and I liked it that way. The double life wasn't glamorous, it was survival. The first secret I kept was stupid, a crush on someone who would never notice me. Every story starts there, right? Mine was on a senior named Mason, the kind of boy you could sketch from memory after seeing once. He was tall in a way lockers noticed, always had a pencil behind his ear, and never raised his voice because his silence did the heavy lifting. He ran lights for every show and wore a black hoodie with the sleeves pushed up, forearms smudged with ghost fingerprints from cables and paint. In a school where volume was currency, he was a whisper that people leaned toward, and I was always leaning. I learned his schedule without meaning to. I knew the days he stayed in the booth after final bell, the times he cut through the English wing holding coils of cable like sleeping snakes, the way his laugh sounded when Mr. Corman, the theatre director, said something dry. The first time he held the door for me, Mimi, I said thank you too quiet and then spent the rest of the week replaying it like it meant anything. I'm not proud of this person, but she was me. The second secret was heavier. It was about who I wasn't when girls decided I was. There's a kind of bullying that doesn't leave bruises. It's the kind where a group decides your name is a sound you don't recognize and repeats it until you forget how to answer to your own. It started sophomore year when I answered a question in history and got it right in a way that made the teacher smile. The row in front of me turned as one and looked at me like I had committed a betrayal. Their leader, Shayla, glitter eyeliner sharp enough to slice, leaned back and whispered, "Teacher's pet," like a slur. It stuck. Everything sticks when you're soft. I tried to laugh it off, tried to hide the A in my backpack instead of on the edge of the table, tried to make my mind smaller and my jokes bigger. It worked until it didn't. The third secret was the one that kept me awake. It started with a text from a number I didn't have saved, want to make some money. There was a photo of a backpack stuffed with cash like those ads on the internet for dropshipping fame. I almost deleted it. Then the messages came one after another, the tone not threatening exactly, more like a salesman who really thinks you need a different life. "We know you like to write," it said. "We know you're good at it. We'll pay for essays. No one gets hurt." That last sentence did the thing it was designed to do. It built a bridge. I had 2 part-time shifts at the smoothie place and a mother who said, "We're fine," in a voice that meant choose the cheap cereal. I wrote back, "Who is this?" The answer was a photo of the theatre booth, taken from the aisle, empty chairs lit by the faint glow of a board that looked like a spaceship. The caption said, "Someone who also likes the dark." I didn't say yes, I didn't say no. I dropped my phone face down on my bed and stared at the ceiling where the glow-in-the-dark stars I stuck up in middle school still pretended we were somewhere else. The next day my biology partner, Trevor, whispered that his English essay had written itself. 2 days later, a junior in my chemistry class bragged about an A on a paper she'd totally thought she'd fail. The school had a rumor about a ghostwriter. I didn't need the money that bad, except maybe I did. There is a gravity to easy money when the world feels tilted against you. You tell yourself it's not hurting anyone, then you realize that the person you've been lying to isn't your teacher. It's you. The card under my locker was a different kind of cell. I unfolded it that night at my desk, the lamplight making thin yellow moons on the edges. "I see you sneaking out of the theatre," it said again. "I see the way you look at him." The next lines were written in a hand that tried to look casual and failed. "Don't worry, no one else has to. Meet me in the catwalk after last bell tomorrow. Bring something to trade." It was signed, D. The only D I knew in that building who would know the catwalk was Daisy. a sophomore on costume crew who wore combat boots with floral dresses and chewed on pins while she talked. She loaned me a safety pin once without asking what for, and I thought that meant we were the same kind of people. Maybe we were. Maybe the sameness is what makes betrayal possible. I didn't go to the catwalk. I sat in the auditorium seats instead, 4th row, center, hands tucked under my thighs so I wouldn't chew the skin around my nails until they bled. The lights were work lights, flat and honest. On stage, the set from the fall play stood half-struck. A prom arch, a fake wall leaning against the curtain, a painted skyline of a city that had never existed. The stage smelled like sawdust and teenage effort. Mason crossed from wing to wing carrying something heavy on one shoulder, a coil of extension cord in his free hand. He didn't look at the seats. He never looked at the seats. That was his power. He existed in a world 3 feet above us. I wasn't brave enough to stand up. Daisy slid into the seat beside me without asking. "Nora," she whispered, and I thought about not answering until she said my name louder. I turned. Her eyes were steady. "You didn't come up," she said, like we'd made plans. She popped a pin from her mouth and stuck it into the strap of her bag like a badge. "We need to talk." "I don't have anything to trade," I said before I could think about how that sounded. She laughed softly, not unkind. "Relax, I'm not going to sell your secrets. I wanted to warn you. People notice patterns. You leave lunch at the same time every day. You sit in the same seat. It's sweet. It's also a target." I stared at the seat backs, their fabric worn thin where hands had gripped through years of applause. "Why do you care?" I asked. She shrugged. "Because I've been a target. Because if I could go back, I'd want someone to tell me how to stop painting a bullseye on my chest. Because you looked like me last year before I shaved my head." She smiled like that was a story. "Also, this place is full of ghosts. Better to be friends with them." I didn't know what to do with kindness that arrived dressed as a warning. I didn't tell her about the essay texts or the money or the way my mother counted coupons like prayers. I didn't tell her about the crush it made my stomach hurt to carry. I said, "Okay, thanks." She nodded like a doctor whose patient has decided to take the medicine. "Change your route," she said. "Change your seat, change your tells, don't give the hallway a show." Then she stood and left, boots thumping against the worn carpet as if to say, "I'm not apologizing for the space I take." I moved my seat to the back row and started leaving lunch 5 minutes later. It worked for a week. Then the text started again, different number. This time there was no backpack photo. Just, "We know you write, we pay per page, no one will ever know, you won't even have to meet, we drop cash, you pick it up," like a treasure hunt with deadlines. I told myself that writing wasn't cheating, it was a service. People hired tutors, didn't they? They hired editors. I was just helping. The first essay I wrote wasn't even in my school. It was for a senior at the private academy across town where the parking lot looked like a car commercial. The prompt was about The Great Gatsby and the American Dream, a book I loved and hated for the way it made hope feel like a con. I wrote it in an hour and a half, hands flying, heart calm. When I finished, I felt sick. The drop spot was behind the old laundromat in a cracked green mailbox no one used. The cash was in an envelope under rock by the lilac bushes 2 blocks away. It felt like a spy movie shot in a grocery store. Then I wrote another, and another. I told myself I had limits. I wouldn't write persuasive speeches. I wouldn't write love letters. I wouldn't write for people I knew. All of those rules lasted about as long as the money did. My mother never asked where the extra bills came from when I left them on the counter folded into quarters. She said, "You don't have to do that," and then used them anyway. I bought a pair of shoes that didn't make my toes ache. I bought a used copy of a play collection and put it by my bed like a future. Secrets change how you stand. I learned to walk through the hallway like my backpack was empty when it was. I learned to smile at jokes that cut and then write about them later with a precision that scared me. I learned to keep my face calm when Shayla said, "Nice thrift store cardigan," like poverty was a personality trait. I learned to keep my body smaller when Mason brushed past, eyes on the ceiling grid, clueless and kind in a way that would always both hurt me and keep me safe. The night everything almost burned down started with a homecoming party I wasn't invited to and went to anyway. It wasn't rebellion. It was curiosity. I wanted to see what other people looked like when they didn't think anyone was watching them. The house was a Pinterest board come to life. Fairy lights, solo cups, a backyard with a fire pit someone's father built on a weekend of wanting to be loved. I stayed near the fence and held a cup I didn't drink from and tried to look like furniture that no one would sit on. Daisy found me again because some people are magnetic in a way that isn't showy, it's gravitational. She looped her arm through mine and said, "You're bad at hiding," and I said, "That's hilarious." and she laughed like it was fair to tell the truth that way. Shayla arrived late with a coat that belonged to someone older and richer and a story about a college boy that made everyone lean in. She saw me, dismissed me, and moved on. Her group had a way of forming a stage around her. I was thinking about leaving when I saw Mason. He wasn't supposed to be there. He didn't go to parties. He went to work and then went home and then came back to work. He was standing by the kitchen island with a couple of theatre kids, hands in his pockets, eyebrows up in that polite interest boys get taught is attractive. I looked away before he could look for the person who was watching him. When I looked back, he wasn't there. Behind the house by the fire, someone shouted, "Do it," and someone else shouted, "Don't be a coward," and I walked toward the noise knowing I shouldn't. Mason was on the stone ledge of the pit, a slight wobble to his stance, holding a stack of papers like a magician holds a deck. Shayla stood opposite him with a smile that could cut fruit. "Read it," she said sweetly. "You're the reader, right? Read what's in your hand." He flipped through the pages. He looked confused. "What is this?" he asked. "It's a poem," Shayla said. "At least that's what Daisy said." She turned toward the crowd and added, louder, "Original work by our very own Nora, patron saint of the back row." My name landed in the air like a slap. The circle closed. My lungs forgot their job. Daisy's face, my ally with the pins, the warnings, the boots, looked like stone. She didn't nod. She didn't deny. She just stood beside Shayla, hands in her coat pockets, eyes on me like I was the one who owed an explanation. There was a feeling I can't describe, except to say it was like being underwater and realizing everyone else had agreed not to tell you. Mason looked up, looked at me, then back at the pages. He cleared his throat. "I'm not going to read someone else's stuff," he said, and for a second love forgave him for existing. Shayla pouted. "Spoil sport," she said. "Give it to me then." She snatched the papers and started to read with that performative cadence mean girls get taught listening is optional. "Everything I hid in high school," she began, and the crowd laughed because the title is funny when you think other people's pain is entertainment. It was my poem, the one I wrote at 2 a.m. on my floor with my back against the bed and my hands moving faster than my shame. It was all of it, the crush, the essays, the hallway hurts, the theatre seat in the back row, the way I signed my name in lowercase so no one would notice I was there. She read it wrong, not because she didn't hit the pauses, but because she didn't care. I reached for the pages, and by the time I did, I wasn't reaching for paper. I was reaching for my own throat. Mason stepped between us. It wasn't heroic, it was logistical. He said, "Shayla, just stop." And she said, "Or what?" And someone said, "Fight," and someone else said, "Kiss," because high school is a carnival ride designed by a sadist. Daisy put a hand on Shayla's arm and said, "Enough," but she said it too late. The poem hit the fire. It didn't catch immediately. For a second the paper curled into itself like it hadn't decided. Then the flame took. It ran up the margin, orange chewing black, words disappearing without ever having been seen. I didn't move, I couldn't. It wasn't that she burned my poem. It was that she burned my confession. And for a second I was relieved. If it's gone, you don't have to be. Then the relief turned to something else, a clean rage that wasn't loud or messy. It was mathematical. It said, "You've been hiding inside a room with the door open. Walk out." I reached into the fire with a stick and pulled the last page out. The corner was black, the middle still legible. I read the final lines out loud over the hush. "I am tired of folding myself into shapes you didn't ask for. I am tired of losing at games I never agreed to play. I am tired of hiding things that were never crimes." My voice didn't shake. It didn't need to. The page smoked in my hand. Someone coughed. Someone laughed. Someone said, "Whatever." Shayla rolled her eyes and said, "Wow, deep." Daisy met my eyes and held them. There was an apology there, faint and late, and something uglier, envy. It was as clear to me as if she'd written it on a note and slid it under my locker. I didn't go home. I went to the theatre. I used the key, that stupid, wonderful symbol of a future that didn't know my name yet, and let myself in. The stage was dark. The work lights clicked on with a soft hum. I walked to center and stood there with my arms out, palms up like a testing. The air was warm. The room did not judge me. I whispered everything I hid in high school, and the room whispered it back. No laughter, no glitter, no fire, just the sound of wood and velvet and possibility. When I left, my phone lit up in my pocket. A text from an unknown number, "Nice speech. See you Monday. The cash will be under the bench by the tennis courts." I stared at it until the screen went dark. Then I typed no. Then I'm done. Then I deleted both and wrote nothing, because sometimes silence is the only true answer. Monday morning, the index card under my locker was gone and replaced with a single photocopy of a page from my poem. the line about the essays circled in red. There was a smiley face drawn next to it, the kind that says we both know what you did. That's where I'll stop for now. With the copy in my hand, the hallway loud, the theatre quiet in my lungs, the money out there under some bench cooling in air I wouldn't breathe for it anymore, the circle tightening, the friend I thought I had turning sharp, the boy who didn't read my life out loud walking past me without knowing he'd been my witness. The thing about hiding is you start to believe the only way to be safe is to stay small. The thing about a fire is it gives you two choices, step back or step through. The copy felt heavier than the paper it was printed on. I shoved it into my binder fast, like sliding contraband out of sight could make it less real. But the red circle stayed in my head all morning, glowing behind every word a teacher said. When Mrs. Keegan asked me to read the second paragraph of the chapter aloud, my voice sounded normal, but inside I was screaming, "They know, they know, they know." At lunch I sat in my new back corner seat, staring at my tray like mashed potatoes could solve things. Daisy slid into the chair across from me, the scrape of plastic on linoleum making my chest tighten. She didn't look sorry, she looked curious. "So," she said, drawing out the word, "how does it feel?" "How does what feel?" I asked, though we both knew. "To be seen," she said. She leaned forward, eyes sharp. "That poem, people are still talking about it. Shayla thinks she won, she always does, but I saw their faces. Half of them heard you for the first time, even Mason, especially Mason." I hated the way she said his name, like she had a claim on him just because she noticed me noticing. I kept my voice flat. "You had no right." She smirked, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're welcome." Then she leaned back, arms folded like a verdict. I wanted to shout at her, demand why she handed my secret over to Shayla, why she let it burn. But the cafeteria was loud, and my voice would have been swallowed. And part of me knew she wouldn't give me an answer I could use. Some betrayals aren't about logic, they're about hunger. After lunch I went to the auditorium. It smelled like sawdust again, like safety. I thought I was alone until I saw Mason up in the booth, bent over the light board. For a second I almost left, secrets make you a coward that way. But then he called down, "Hey," without looking up, like he'd been expecting me. I froze. "Hey," I said back. He adjusted a switch, then finally looked down. "That poem, was it really yours?" My throat was dry. "Yeah." He nodded once, slow. "It was good." He said it like a fact, not a compliment, like light comes from the sun. Something in me loosened. I sat in the fourth row again, the seat that had betrayed me and saved me both. For 5 minutes neither of us said anything, just the hum of the lights, the sound of pencils rolling on the board. It was the quietest kind of understanding I'd ever had with another human. But when I got home, the photocopy was waiting again, taped to my bedroom window from the outside. Same circle, same smiley face, this time one new word written in Sharpie across the top, soon. My heart thudded so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Whoever it was, Daisy, Shayla, maybe even someone I hadn't considered, they weren't just trying to expose me, they were hunting me. That night I sat at my desk and wrote the truth, not the prettied-up version for an assignment, not the half-truths I'd been living, just the raw version. I wrote for money. I wrote because being invisible was safer than being mocked. I wrote because it was the only way I knew to survive. And I wrote because hiding was easier than asking anyone to care. When I finished, I stared at the pages. If someone wanted to burn them, they could. If someone wanted to use them against me, they could. But at least they were mine this time. I didn't know it then, but the choice was coming. To keep folding myself into smaller and smaller shapes for safety, or to unfold in the middle of the fire and see what survived. The next morning the photocopy was gone from my window, not torn down, not blown away, gone, as if whoever left it wanted me to know they could appear and vanish at will. That scared me more than the note itself. By third period another copy showed up, this time in my locker, taped to the inside of the door so when I opened it, it stared back at me. Soon, same red circle, same mocking smile. I slammed the door shut so fast the hinge squealed. Shayla, at her locker down the row, looked over with a smirk. "Careful, Nora, that locker's been here longer than you. Don't break it with all your secrets." The girls around her giggled. I forced a laugh like it didn't sting, but my hands were shaking. By lunchtime I was too wired to sit still. I cut through the back hallway toward the auditorium, the only place that still felt like mine. But when I pushed the side door open, I wasn't alone. Daisy was sitting cross-legged on stage, sewing a ripped costume with that same calm focus she always carried. She didn't look up. "You're jumpy," she said. You don't know anything about me, I snapped. Finally she looked at me, eyes steady. Don't I? I know you leave lunch early. I know you write things you don't share. I know Mason makes you forget how to breathe. And I know you're scared right now because someone out there has the power you've been trying to hide. Her words cut too close. Was it you? I demanded. Are you the one leaving those notes, the photocopies? She blinked, surprised, or she pretended to be. No. I didn't believe her, not completely, but there was something in her voice, low and unflinching, that made me doubt my suspicion. Then who? I whispered. She shrugged. This school runs on secrets. Maybe it's someone who wants to use yours. Maybe it's someone who wishes they could write like you and hates you for it. Her words sat heavy in my chest. I turned to leave, but she called after me. Careful, Nora. When people smell fear, they don't stop until you bleed. That night another photocopy showed up. This one slid under my front door. My mother picked it up before I did. What's this? She asked, unfolding it. My blood went cold. Just a joke, I said quickly, snatching it from her hands. Her eyes narrowed. What kind of joke? The dumb high school kind, I muttered, shoving it into my bag. Don't worry about it. But I could tell she did. I could tell she saw something in my face I couldn't hide anymore. By Friday, the whole thing came crashing down. We were in English doing peer review essays. Mrs. Keegan had us swap papers with the person next to us. I slid mine over, heart pounding because I knew what was coming. The girl next to me, quiet, forgettable, froze halfway through reading. Then she raised her hand. Mrs. Keegan, she asked, this sounds exactly like the ghost-written papers people have been talking about. The room went dead silent. My blood turned to ice. Mrs. Keegan's eyes snapped to me. Nora, she asked, calm but sharp, is there something you'd like to explain? Every eye in the room was on me. Mason was across the hall, frozen mid-note. Shayla's smirk bloomed like a flower finally getting sunlight. Daisy's expression was unreadable, somewhere between pity and challenge. And me, my secrets, the essays, the poem, the double life I'd been balancing like glass, was suddenly on the edge of shattering. I opened my mouth, not knowing if the words would save me or destroy me. My throat felt like sandpaper. Everyone was staring, waiting for me to slip, to confirm the whispers they'd been feeding on for weeks. Mrs. Keegan stepped closer, her heels clicking like a countdown. Nora, she repeated, softer this time, is there something we should know? I could have lied. I could have said the essay sounded like me because I helped my friend brainstorm. I could have laughed it off and said people just like to copy my style. I could have pointed at Shayla and accused her of setting me up. 1,000 outs flashed through my brain, each one weaker than the last. Instead, I heard my own voice, steady, shaking, both at once, say, yes. The class sucked in a collective breath. Mrs. Keegan's eyebrows lifted. Yes. Yes, I said again louder. I wrote papers for people, for money. I did it because they asked, and because I thought I needed it, and because hiding was easier than being myself. The silence after that was the kind you feel in your bones. Shayla's smirk cracked into shock, then delight. Oh my God, she whispered too loud. She actually admitted it. A ripple of whispers spread through the room. Daisy didn't look away from me. Mason's eyes were wide, not angry, not disappointed, just seeing me. Mrs. Keegan held up a hand. The room hushed. Nora, thank you for being honest, she said carefully. We'll need to discuss this privately after class. Her words should have felt like a death sentence. Instead, they felt like release. The secret was out. The double life was broken. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying it alone. But relief is fragile. It lasted until the bell rang and people flooded out, buzzing with new gossip. In the hallway, whispers followed me like shadows. Ghostwriter, cheat, fraud. Some voices had awe in them, others disgust, both burned. Then Mason walked up beside me. That poem, he said quietly. The one Shayla burned, you wrote that too, didn't you? I nodded, couldn't speak. He looked at me for a long moment. Then, don't let them turn your words into weapons. They're yours, keep them yours. And just like that, he walked away. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't approval. It was something better, recognition. But I didn't have time to let that settle, because when I opened my locker at the end of the day, another photocopy was waiting. This time the Sharpie message was soon. It was, confession isn't enough. Next week the whole school will know the rest. The rest, which meant whoever was behind it wasn't finished. They wanted more. They wanted everything I hid in high school, not just the pieces I'd chosen to show. And for the first time, I realized I had two choices: let them strip me bare on their terms, or tell the truth on mine. The weekend felt like walking on glass. Every vibration of my phone made my heart race, every creak of the house made me check the window for another copy, but nothing came. The silence was worse than the threats. Silence meant planning. By Monday, the tension followed me into school like a second shadow. People glanced my way in the halls, some curious, some cruel. I caught Shayla whispering to her friends, eyes flicking at me like I was the day's headline. Daisy brushed past me without a word, her face a blank wall. Fourth period, it happened. We were in assembly, the whole school crammed into the gym bleachers, buzzing with the usual restlessness. The principal was giving one of his monotone speeches about responsibility when the projector behind him flickered to life. At first I thought it was an accident, a loose cable maybe, but then the slide changed. And there it was. My poem, Everything I Hid in High School. Line after line scrolled across the screen, my handwriting scanned and blown up 10 feet tall. The crush, the essays, the bullying, the double life, all of it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Laughter too, sharp, cruel, the kind that cuts deeper than knives. I wanted to sink into the floor, I wanted to disappear, but the projector wouldn't let me. My secrets were illuminated in front of everyone. The principal spun around, confused, fumbling with the laptop. "What is this?" he barked. Teachers scrambled, but the words kept scrolling, unstoppable. And then something inside me snapped. I stood, my legs shook, but I stood. My voice carried louder than I thought it could. "That's mine." The gym went silent. Hundreds of eyes turned to me, my pulse hammered, but I didn't stop. Yes, I wrote it, all of it, the crush, the lies, the mistakes, the parts of me I was too scared to show you. And guess what? You don't get to weaponize it, not anymore. My voice broke on the last word, but it didn't matter, because the silence that followed wasn't cruel. It was stunned. Shayla's smirk faltered. Daisy shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Even the teachers froze, unsure what to do with a teenager who'd just turned an ambush into a confession. The principal cleared his throat. "All right, let's take 5 minutes," he stammered, signaling for the projector to be shut off. But the damage was already done, or maybe the healing had already started. Because as I sat back down, Mason caught my eye across the gym. He didn't smile, he didn't look away either. He just nodded once, steady. Like he'd seen me step through fire and was acknowledging the burn. That afternoon, another photocopy showed up in my locker. This one was blank except for 2 words in Sharpie, "Well played." For the first time I didn't feel fear, I felt free. Because everything I hid in high school was out, and I was still standing. The thing about secrets is that you think they keep you safe. You think if you hide the crush, the hurt, the mistakes, no one can touch you. But hiding is a prison you build yourself, and eventually someone will try to rattle the bars just to watch you flinch. That day in the gym, when my words scrolled across the screen and I thought my world was ending, something strange happened. It didn't end. I stood up, I spoke, and instead of breaking me, the truth broke the hold my fear had over me. People whispered after, some laughed, some looked at me differently, but you know what? At least they were looking at me, not the mask I'd been wearing. And here's what I learned: betrayal hurts, being exposed hurts, but nothing hurts more than betraying yourself by staying silent. So if you're carrying secrets right now, if you're shrinking yourself to survive high school, to survive life, hear me. You don't owe anyone perfection. You don't owe anyone silence. The only thing you owe yourself is honesty. Because when you stop hiding, the worst thing people can do is laugh. And the best thing is that you finally get to live without waiting for the next photocopy, the next note, the next voice telling you you're not enough. Everything I hid in high school didn't destroy me, it freed me. And maybe, just maybe, it can free you too.